And next, we come a bit closer to home. We go to the UK, where Nathan Sundheimer of Plug and Play is going to be talking to Joao Bocas of the Digital Salutem, talking about wearables and the future of wearables in healthcare. So Nathan, over to you, and looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jerry. And hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Sundheimer, and I lead U.S. healthcare partnerships at Plug and Play. Really excited to be here today with my colleague, Joao Bocas from Digital Salutem. Joao, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Delighted to be here. Nice to connect again, Nathan.
Absolutely. Before we get kicked off today, Joao, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Digital Salutem, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, fantastic. So my name is Joao Bocas. I'm a Portuguese national based in UK in the last 20 years. And I always been involved in sport and health. I've been in healthcare personally for over 20 years, but the last 7 years, I've been heavily involved in digital health and digital health innovation globally. And Digital Salutem was born in 2015. And now we are on a global mission to make healthcare uncomplicated. So we have technology, but we also look and work with very large brands in the healthcare space.
Perfect. Thanks so much. To get us started, my first question for you is, can you talk about remote patient monitoring during the pandemic and the role of virtual solutions and remote monitoring?
Yeah, sure, Nathan. Very good question. I mean, where can I start? Look, in terms of remote patient monitoring, we're seeing a lot of digital solutions now, but I think the pandemic really highlighted the need and also what we could be doing and we should be doing. And for example, I'll give you an example. We couldn't go, well, in lockdowns globally around the world, we couldn't go to hospitals, we couldn't go to doctors, we couldn't go to clinics. So how do we keep an eye on patients? How do we keep an eye on people? By remote monitoring them with digital technologies, software, but also hardware with wearables. And in here, I really see a very strong combination, a very strong merging of the wearables and the software, where we can gather data, keep one eye on trends, on any deterioration of patients. And I think we're going to see more and more in the future remote monitoring as being the norm, and also virtual solutions. For example, in terms of managing long-term conditions is very, is very popular, kind of bringing people in to check them all the time. I don't think in the future we need to do that constantly, and unless it's a sign of deterioration, and wearables and virtual solutions give us that capabilities. But let me give you one last example. For example, we have a very strong global partner technology that we're using now. And in terms of virtual worlds, we can monitor people by, them not being present, being at home, in care settings, or anywhere. And you still have the clinician talking to them and monitoring them. So I think that's where we are heading.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's extremely insightful. And to follow up on that, can you talk about the role of wearable technology in the future of healthcare? And more specifically, can you please discuss some of those common challenges, especially with the existing medical devices, and what does that future look like?
Sure. Well, I see, Nathan, the future of wearables being crucial for healthcare, because with wearables, we can collect data, analyze data. We can also put a spin on preventative side, which is a very, very strong endeavor for many, many years, which is extremely difficult to practice preventative health. I believe with wearables, we can certainly pretend and accomplish that. Self-management and management of long-term conditions, and even treatment and prescription, because now the wearables give us so much insight, but also the predictive analytics side, the early deterioration signs, the data analysis and insights that wearables bring to healthcare is extremely valuable, because healthcare is all about the people, but it's all about the data, and is all about what can be done early on. So, and I see a really great evolution here, of course, with many challenges, as you mentioned. Certainly the medical device side is moving very fast with more regulation, But I'm also seeing the medical devices being much more accurate, more reliable. A lot of technology is coming out, and wearables now are all in different shapes and forms. It's not about the bulky blood pressure monitor anymore. We see a lot of medical devices. We see a lot of smart devices, smart rings, smart belts, clothing. We are seeing a lot of all these things. And I was talking about wearables today with a great innovator, Alivacor, that they have ECG monitoring device. They started on the back of a mobile phone, and now they actually evolving the third generation of their product. But it's so much going on in the space. But let me highlight some of the challenges. I actually done a 159 pages health engagement report on wearables. And from a consumer side, the motivation, the intrinsic motivation is one of the barriers, because people use them for an amount of time and then stop. They also feedback us that they don't get the right guidance, the right support. But from the device side, the device barriers, we see a lot of interoperability issues, cybersecurity and security in general, because wearables are great, but also they are a door for the hackers to get in, whether there is on the app or on a software. And Nathan, I always remember this example. I was at a cybersecurity conference. I'm not a data expert or cybersecurity expert, but this expert in cybersecurity gave an example that the hackers went through the data through a fish tank. They had an IoT device, and it's incredible. So this really highlights some of the security and privacy issues. The lack of personalization is also one of the main barriers, because we tend to do things like for general usage, and the lack of support. Yeah, and because we are human beings, as normal, is human errors, isn't it? And we forget to charge the device or leave on the top of the fridge. And I've been guilty of that so many times. And I have wearables everywhere in my house. So anyway, so many things to consider.
Got it. Thank you. We did have an interesting question come in from the audience, and they asked, what do you think could be the trigger for customer adoption in that case?
Oh, very, very good question. Well, I think certainly, I'll give you an example. Fitbit, a couple of years ago, they got great device. They got probably the first brand coming out. Everybody even called wearables Fitbit, not anymore, but anyway. They acquired a coaching company. And I think one of the gaps that we need to close is certainly the educational side. The educational side is always the missing link in health in general, but also the combination of education and then the device to run up adoption and of course get people more engaged. I think that is also the missing link, and we can do more as wearable providers or people in the industry to kind of simplify that process, but also make people understand how can they make the most out of their wearable. You know, we need to guide, educate people. So I think that is a very, very big piece of work to be done.
Awesome, thank you. And transitioning from there, can you please talk about the state of digital health and digital transformation in healthcare? And more specifically, can you please talk about the importance of partnerships, these good practices, organizational adoption, and how this all evolves?
Yeah, well, fantastic question. The digital transformation as a whole is a very complex and is a big piece of change management, personnel, operations, technology. One of the things that I've been noticing is extremely important to involve all the stakeholders. And this question comes up all the time. Involve the patient right from the beginning. Also, now a lot of companies doing co-creation. So involve the patient in creating solutions, hear them, make sure the technology or the solution is adaptable, is formulated in a good way, right from the outset, and also have a culture of partnership instead of saying, okay, we have a stakeholder over there playing this role and we are doing this. So make sure you kind of get that ecosystem working as one, as best as possible, as a partnership, pushing in the same direction. I think that is very important. And then you have the cultural side, you have the education piece also comes up in terms of educating personnel in digital capabilities and everything else. But one thing that I would say that I think is crucial is not to start with the digital, not to start with the technology. Start by saying, actually, what are we trying to accomplish? What are the things that we need to consider? Where we are going, who we need to involve, and then merge and blend the technology along the way, or even in last point. Because what I see a lot is a lot of organizations starting with the provider, starting with the vendor, starting with the technology, and then a few months later or a few years or whatever that is, they spend a lot of resources and time to figure out that didn't work the way they planned. So you need to kind of think the other way around. Start with the questions and with the end result in mind, and then blend with the technology. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, very, very helpful. Thank you. And just kind of going back to our previous point, I missed another question in the Q&A box, but I thought it was especially fascinating. But in your opinion, what set of diagnostic variables have been the hardest or the easiest to obtain? Like what is that hard? What is the most difficult piece of data for you to obtain from a wearable?
Well, that's a really, really good question. I'm not a clinician as such, to be honest. I'm not a medical person, but to be honest, I see a lot of innovators trying to crack on the blood glucose monitoring, for many, many years. I think that is certainly a very difficult one. And I see a lot of claims about non-invasive solutions that never really came to fruition, never came to the market. And I've been in a digital health space for quite some time. I see a lot of startups from all over the world, from the Nordics. I think that is certainly a very difficult one to acquire. And now also blood pressure monitoring, which is changing. I think we're getting closer of getting reliable blood pressure monitoring on our wrists, which has not been an easy thing to do. But I think we are very, very close. And I think the big players will come out soon with some announcements. I think Apple has been working on it for a few years.
Okay.
And the things that seemed very difficult 10 years ago probably look very easy in a year or two to come.
Awesome. Thank you. And then just one more final question before we sign off today. I know we just have a minute or two left, but you've mentioned all these different wearable devices. You've mentioned these different pieces of technology. You've mentioned different startups such as AlivaCore and Fitbit and Apple. But in your space or through your lens, who's kind of leading the charge for the next most advanced wearable technology? Is there any company or any sort of startup that comes to mind saying, these guys have figured it out and they're doing it right, and I can't wait to see what they're going to do in 2 years?
Yeah, well, it's very difficult because there are a lot of companies doing great things. I can mention, for example, I really like Israeli companies. Is a very strong bet, let's say, for digital health. I could mention Oxytone Medical, which is a wearable medical device company that has done a lot of work in having a credible medical device that produces accurate data in terms of helping the remote monitoring. So check them out, Oxytone Medical. They have some credibility, all the regulatory side in place. It's extremely important on the medical side to be reliable. So that would be my shout out. But there's so many.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, Joao. I really appreciate it. And I think that's all the time we have for today. So I'm going to transition it back to Jerry, but it was wonderful to have a conversation with you today. And I hope everyone in the audience gained quite a bit of insight from all that information that you shared.
Thank you, Nathan. Nice to connect with you. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Have a good one, Jerry. It's all you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Joao. Really, really wonderful conversation, and to get another layer of insight to the wearable tech that we wear on a day-to-day basis. So really, really wonderful. Again, I want to emphasize, if you want to get connected to any of our speakers today or any of our interviewers, please do check out the chat box, their LinkedIn's, and organization websites are all on there, posted up by Maddie Lazar, our social media guru. And do please feel free to check them out and continue to engage us in the Q&A box and the chat box.